Being located right next to the governor's mansion has been a remarkable opportunity for us, and this is such a historic place. One never loses sight of the struggle that black people have undertaken for decades in this city, and one never loses sight of the struggle that is left to be undertaken. There's not a day that goes by when I don't think that there's some challenge that still has to be met. There's some person out there with a problem. I get as many as 25 to 30 calls per day just from people who have complaints of discrimination, either in employment, housing, school-related problems. And then I look over at the governor's mansion and I just wonder if there was any opportunity in the world for one person to do a lot to solve those problems. It is right over there at the governor's mansion, and it keeps me going. It lets me know that there's still a lot of work for me to do, and I try to do it every day, every week. Sometimes I get tired, but I keep going.
What's it like for a black lawyer in a southern town, Alabama, and Montgomery in particular? Is it easy? Do you think it would be harder up north or easier, you know?
It's tough to make a living. It's tough to go into the various courthouses, but over time you can make people respect you. You can't make them like you, but you can make them respect you if you fight hard, if you put on a professional fight, and you actually win cases a lot of the time. If you're prepared, do your homework, put on your presentation, you can win for your client, and there's nothing that beats the feeling of helping some poor, small person, small in the larger scheme of things, achieve satisfaction and achieve his or her goal of being vindicated and having their legal rights vindicated. There's nothing that beats that feeling. I don't care if it takes 1 year, 6 years, or 12 years to get to the end of that road. Once you get there and see tears of joy, and you remember the tears of heartache and hurt when you first met them, they're words. I don't have words to describe that.
The phrase "the New South" has been bandied around and over and over again. What do you think the New South is? I mean,
well, obviously, the New South means that there are some opportunities out here. For example, the city of Birmingham. I represent the city of Birmingham's mayor now. That is the largest city in this state. The mayor is black. 5 of the 9 council persons are black. There has been a change in the power structure. There has been a change in the political clout, but the resistance is still the same. White resistance to black political power it has not changed at all. The rhetoric has changed. People don't talk about nigger this, nigger that. People use the term conservative, and rather than identifying an issue as a racial issue, it becomes a political issue. But the challenges are the same in that respect. The mayor of Birmingham, Mayor Arrington, has to fight day in and day out to get people to not undermine the influence of that office, influence that used to be taken for granted when it was occupied by white mayors. But I don't think much has changed in the relative scheme of things. There has been a change in the color of various office holders, but the massive resistance in terms of educational opportunities, voting opportunities, etc., economic opportunities has not changed that much. The battles are still out there. They're more complex. They're harder to win. They're harder to get to the end of the rainbow, but they're just as numerous as they were when I first started 14 years ago. I don't like the fact that the Confederate flag still flies atop the Alabama Capitol. Most people don't realize it, but it took a lawsuit filed in the mid-70s by a black state representative to change the order of the flying of that flag. At one time, prior to that lawsuit, the Confederate flag was flown above the United States flag. It's hard to explain to black people in general how that kind of situation could occur. But I think there are a lot of whites in this state, and probably a lot of whites in the nation, who achieve some sort of satisfaction out of seeing the Confederate flag remaining in a prominent display, whether it's on top of our Capitol or on some other flagpole. It's an insult to blacks, but it's one of those insults that we just have to put up with on a day-to-day basis.
When did you get into law?
I went to undergrad school in Illinois in 1966. I went off to be an architect, and during my freshman year I had an opportunity to read a book about the Scottsboro Boys. Those were 9 black youths who were arrested in 1931 in Alabama for allegedly raping 2 white women. I read that book in one night. I was so fascinated by the work of the legal team. I had never thought about law as a profession or an occupation prior to that time. But I was so fascinated, I figured that was the career for me, and I changed my majors. I went through undergrad school. I decided that I wanted to go to law school in the state of Alabama, so I got admitted to the University of Alabama's law school. It was tough. It was hard. I survived that and came out into private practice. Fred Gray, who's a prominent Tuskegee attorney, gave me the break I needed to get in private practice. I worked for his firm, and as fate would have it, the very first case I had, which was given to me by Fred Gray, was the case of Clarence Norris. He was the last known surviving Scottsboro boy, and I worked on that case for 2 years, and we finally got a pardon from the state of Alabama in November 1976 for Mr. Clarence Norris, and that at the time was the highlight or the apex of my career. I could not believe that I had that case. That is why I went to law school, and that is how I got into the profession.
For a long time, George Wallace lived in that house, and he was emblematic and representative for a lot of people of Alabama and the South in particular. Nowadays, George Wallace is enjoying a different kind of image, at least it seems that way. Is he typical of the South and of the people who were known as the segregationists at that time, or is he not, is he an exception, or is he the rule?
George Wallace stayed in this mansion and built a political dynasty off of denying the rights of black people to participate fully in every aspect of life in this state. He was very successful at it. He was not the only white politician who did it, but he was the best known politician in this state. And a lot of people say George Wallace has changed. I don't know. All I know is that the effect of his policies, the effect of massive resistance still linger, and that I still have to wage battles on a day-to-day basis to make sure that people enjoy the rights that he denied them for so many years as governor. I don't have any personal animosity toward him. I view him as a symbol of a particular kind of power that prevailed here for so many decades, and we still fight what he stood for, and we have a lot of fighting left to do. I have cases, a lot of cases involving the governor's office. There has been a change in this mansion. Guy Hunt is now governor, but there has been no change in the do-nothing attitude of this state and people in the governor's office in terms of solving problems of discrimination involving black people.
Tell us about your current case now.
In 1981, the state of Alabama began a teacher certification testing program, like many states in the nation. What we found out was that the program was designed to and was having the effect of choking off blacks who were trying to enter the teaching profession. We decided we had to do something about it because the governor's office was not doing anything about it. The State Board of Education was not doing anything about it. And we filed what is called a Title VII lawsuit challenging those exams, saying in essence that they were not job related and they were having an adverse impact on blacks seeking to enter the teaching profession. After 5 years of litigation, we reached a consent agreement with the State Board of Education that called for a new certification examination, a new certification process, and called for the elimination of the adverse impact that the test and the process were having on blacks seeking to enter that profession. It was a hard-fought battle. The State Board of Education is now trying to renege on that agreement. That agreement was enforced by the United States Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, and right now that agreement will be implemented after 2 years of fighting to determine whether or not the agreement was valid. So we have kept the gate open through this litigation, through this settlement, for those blacks who seek to enter the teaching profession. If this case had not been litigated, if this agreement had not been reached, you would have virtually no black teachers entering the profession, and almost no blacks represented after a period of time of attrition when those blacks who are already in there retire or otherwise leave the system. So we're pleased about that, but we recognize that's just one of many fights. We're still fighting 30 years after Brown versus Board of Education. We're still fighting to desegregate Alabama's public universities and colleges. As a matter of fact, in December 1985, a federal judge ruled that yes, they are still segregated, and yes, blacks are entitled to be admitted to predominantly white universities, and whites should be admitted to predominantly black universities. So those are two major fronts in just the educational field that we still have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and they consume a lot of time. Those cases consume a lot of energies, and we intend to overcome in those two areas.
Good, cut. Let's go back up. How's it looking, Brad?
Good.
Good light on this?
Yeah.
How's the sound, Tom? What? One story. Full shots of the gentleman walking
Change
by.
of the guard.
Oh, I know.
And it took the court case to get that. Yeah, and they just had one to get them promoted in the Supreme Court. Big one, what, 2 months ago, a month ago, or something like that?
Never stops, does it?
No. Only thing that worries me is there are not a lot of young people who are coming behind me who do what I do. I mean, you know, they just are not interested in this field for one reason or the other. It's
Well,
hard to make money in it,
Yes,
and the
I think
cases
it's a sign
last
of
so.
the times,
Yeah.
too, John. I mean, I really
Yeah.
do. I go to schools. Students talk to me, and I used to remember standing up like in the 60s and talking to directors and saying, you know, why aren't you doing this? You know, all the social stuff. And they stand up now and ask us, how much money do you make? Where can I get a job just like that? And it's all money. It's all like financial related. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know.
Chuck, we've got the largest entering class of black students ever in the law school of Virginia. At 47, the previous high was 33.
The fascinating thing about laws, and particularly civil rights laws, they can literally change the quality of life for individuals. You know, we stand here in front of the governor's mansion and we can look right over there at the guard station, and you'll see black guards there who would not have been there except for litigation that was filed in the early 1970s. And then you can look around further and you'll see some black state troopers with some corporal stripes or sergeant stripes who would not have it but for recent United States Supreme Court cases. So laws can change the quality of life. Civil rights lawyers can give life to those laws. We got plenty of laws on the book, but if you don't have lawyers who are willing to go in the courtroom and battle for these individuals, all you have is a bunch of empty words and phrases, and that's what I like about being a civil rights lawyer. And I don't do it for myself. I do it because I owe that to all those people who died, who got beat, who marched, who didn't have big names and fancy titles and fancy degrees, who held the doors open for me at the University of Alabama. I didn't get in the University of Alabama because I was the smartest black person. There were smart black people long before Donald Watkins who couldn't get in simply because of their color. And it's my obligation and it's my duty, just like I believe it is the duty of every black lawyer who's out here in private practice, to take up his or her fair share of the civil rights cases, and I'm going to do it as long as I can talk, walk, speak, think, hear, and practice as a lawyer. I'm going to make sure that I can keep the door open for as many other people as I can, just as the door was kept open for me.
What would you tell some students who would come to you and say, I'm thinking of going into law? I mean, what should I do? I mean, is law what it was before? I mean, is it as open now? Is it, you know, what would you say? What would your advice?
I think the most effective tool for helping our people and helping other minorities, helping women achieve parity in this society is law. to do it, you need to get started early. I mean, you need to stay in high school, do well in high school, go to college, take the tough courses, do well in college, come on to law school, take the tough courses there. Make sure that you are as good as, if not better than any student in your class, because once you get out here in the practicing world, once you get in the courtroom, you can't really depend on anybody to help you other than yourself. When I was in law school, I was the only black in my section. There were about 75 blacks in my section for that class, and I knew that I really couldn't count on somebody sitting next to me helping me once we got out into the real world, that these people in all probability would be my adversaries once we got out, and they have been. I've seen that over 14 years. But you have to know that you can walk in any courtroom from Athens in the northern part of this state all the way to Mobile and know that you can think on your feet, perform well, and you'll get the satisfaction of knowing that you have helped people. People help us all the time. I still get help. All of the thousands of people who come to me and trust me with their problems, with their hopes and dreams and aspirations, I appreciate that, and I try not to ever forget it. The most important person when I was at law school from 1970 to 73 at the University of Alabama was not some dean or assistant dean or some law professor. The gentleman was the custodian at the law school, Mr. Remus Rhodes. White students called him Remus, black students called him Mr. Rhodes. Mr. Rhodes literally took that first group of black students and shepherded those people through the law school. He showed us how to use the library. He showed us how to study in groups. He showed us how to get the used annotated law books as opposed to the brand new unannotated law books. But anyway, he did that for 3 years, almost personally trying to get us through. And when I graduated, one beautiful May Day, not unlike this day, Mr. Rhodes came out on the law school steps and he grabbed my hand. He would not let it go. He held it firmly, and tears began to stream down his cheeks as he told me about all of the years, the 30 years he had been at that law school, had mopped floors, cleaned toilets, watched George Wallace stand in the schoolhouse door 40 yards away, and told me how he thought he'd never live to see the day when black students would come there, matriculate, graduate, and would go out into the world. And he had only one request that he asked of me and the other law students: please do not forget about those of us who you leave behind. And we have not. We have never forgotten about them. Every time I go into a courtroom, I realize that but for a circumstance of fate, Mr. Rhodes was the custodian and I was the law student. But for a circumstance of fate, I am in the courtroom, he's in the closet, he's in the bathroom. Every time I argue a case, a piece of Mr. Rhodes is in me. And I feel good about that, and I hope that I represent him good and those like him who made it possible for people like me to do my job as a civil rights lawyer.